everyone. So up to this point, we've talked about things like the deaf community, we've talked about deaf advocacy, we've talked about deaf schools, deaf art, deaf literature. All these things that we've learned about up to this point fall under deaf ecosystem, which was the topic of this week. So, deaf ecosystem. Why do we need to learn about the deaf ecosystem? Well, as we just went through the list of all that falls under the deaf ecosystem, it would be easy to understand that if we don't learn about it and advocate for the deaf ecosystem will fall to the wayside and start to crumble. Just like our natural ecosystem, if we don't do things about like global warming, if we don't do things about endangered species, endangered plants, invasive plants and animals, things will get really bad really fast and our ecosystem will be in great trouble. Well, the same applies for the deaf ecosystem. If we don't advocate for businesses around town or around the area where we live, if we don't make aware of deaf schools and their benefit over mainstream schools for deaf children, all these things will fall to the wayside and the deaf community's voice will be silenced. And we don't want that. As deaf allies in training, we want to advocate and make sure that the deaf community is heard. So, what can we do to help the deaf ecosystem as of right now? Well, as in whole, as of Johnson City, one thing we could do is take time to sit down and research what deaf-owned or co-owned businesses are around the area that we could support. For example, there may be one out there that is for, eyes. If we know they're for eyes and we can afford it, then maybe we want to go out and get our glasses or our eyes checked there and support it and then spread the word about that place to deaf people who might not know about it, to everybody else so their voice is heard. As on campus, we are getting more and more deaf aware. As you can see, we have ASL classes, deaf literature classes, or rather deaf linguistics, and deaf culture. But there's still a large gap that needs to be filled in awareness of the deaf community. For example, talking to different departments about how to be more inclusive to deaf people. Maybe adding into the curriculum, different businesses out there and pushing more for, their students in these departments to learn more about the deaf community so they can go out and be allies and also support and go work for these companies so that these companies grow more and are more known to the public. That's all I have for this week.